Well, hello, everybody. This is Travis and Ross with Notes On. We are doing Christ on Purpose, and we are having a wonderful conversation. All of you called us in the middle of it with Adam Tucker, who is a representative of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, I'm noticing on the screen here, see, our guests are usually in the middle screen, but Ross is trying to come between you and me, and I'm not really appreciating it.
Nothing could ever do that, Travis.
But how are you doing, Ross?
Oh, well, I'm in Montana, so I'm really suffering through it. It's pretty tough. I've got a view in front of me of mountains and a little stream and cows, and I'm suffering through it, but I'll get by.
Well, that's not fair.
Yeah, it's not at all. But it's the way it is.
Adam, your seminary is in North Carolina. Do you live in North Carolina itself, or do you live a little bit out of state?
I do. Yeah, I grew up right in the center of North Carolina in a little town called Siler City, where Aunt B lived her last days after the Andy Griffith Show. That's our claim to fame, and live a little south of Greensboro now. So still not too far from home, but not in Charlotte though.
I saw Van Halen play in Greensboro a few years back.
Oh wow, nice.
So
that's
great. We talked about Jimmy Buffett last week. He passed away, as you know, as we all know. But then we talked about, if you want to just witness the image of God in people. And Eddie Van Halen was just such a good artist, and so was Jimmy Buffett. So, but I've never been to Greensboro other than that. So,
oh well, it's nice.
Anyways, welcome. You're here. I invited you here because we're excited about a conference coming up that Southern Evangelical Seminary hosts annually, and I just wanted to bring you on, and I wanted for you to talk about the conference. Maybe next time we meet next week, but for now, tell us what is this conference about, and then we can talk about Southern Seminary and what's on your minds these days in terms of what your mission is for the world.
Sure, I appreciate that, and apologies in advance if you hear our dog yapping in the background. We have a 9-month-old black lab puppy, so she's a good girl, but she's still a puppy, so she's a little yappy at the moment. But
well, we have a dog in the middle, but we have a dog. We have a dog separating us right now, so that's not bothering me.
All right, fair enough. No comment, Ross. You look like a awesome guy to me.
That's okay. I can take it. I'm in Montana.
Touche.
Thank
you. So the seminary's been around for 30 years, and the conference itself has been going on for 29 of those 30 years. So this will be our 29th annual. It was formerly called the National Conference on Christian Apologetics, which is a mouthful. And we have this year actually rebranded to the Steadfast National Conference, our tagline with the seminary being steadfast in the truth. So if you look at the conference logo, it's Steadfast Apologetics and Evangelism National Conference, but that's a mouthful too. So we'll just go with Steadfast. But one of the larger apologetics conferences in the country. It's October 13th and 14th in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So just south of Charlotte, just about a 25-minute drive from the Charlotte airport. And it'll be all day Friday evening, and all day Saturday event, actually with a pre-event Thursday night hosted by Reasons to Believe, our friends from RTB. So you can check it out at ses.edu/national conference, and tickets are on sale. So I'd love for you to come and join us. And actually there's a live stream ticket as well, so you can check that out also.
Well, Adam, let me ask him a question, Travis. What do you see for the average Christian as the value of apologetics? Why should we be studying this kind of material?
Well, it's a great question. So apologetics in general, I've heard it said it's both offensive and defensive. And if I can use just my own personal story as an example, I grew up primarily in a Christian home, but I say if you combine somebody with OCD with somebody who likes to ask questions, then you get me. And so my questions and my doubts, I think were kind of my thorn in the flesh, if you will, because I would be very lazy and very complacent otherwise. So for me, apologetics was, I don't want to use the word savior because Christ is our only savior, but it was tremendously impactful in my own life as a believer to know why Christianity is true and why I'm actually a believer, not just because mom said so or the pastor said so. So from that aspect, it's tremendously helpful for every believer. But of course, we're called to not only be believers but ambassadors. And in this culture, I'm convinced, I don't think this is an overstatement, you cannot be an effective ambassador for Christ if you do not have some level of apologetics understanding. And as you guys know, apologetics is just to give a defense. So in this case, defending why we believe Christianity is true. And that ranges, from everything from does God exist? Does truth exist? Is the Bible reliable? All the way to the issues of homosexuality and abortion and transgenderism and all of these cultural hot button issues that we see as well. And all of those ideas are interconnected. So it is so vital, perhaps today more than ever, for every believer to have at least some level of understanding, or even if they don't understand it, to at least know that the answers are out there and be able to point people to those places to get the answers.
How long have you been with the seminary, Adam?
Oh, goodness. I started as a student in 2007, 2008, something like that.
Did you get to know one of the founders, Norman Geisler? Did you study under him at all?
So interestingly enough, I had his Intro to Apologetics course as old school online education. This was distance education back in the day. You had the recorded CDs or whatever, not live streaming and not, pop on Canvas and watch the video and everything like we have now. So I had his Intro to Apologetics course recorded, but I was fortunate enough to get to know him personally and get to, have lunch with him on several occasions and interact with him. So, yes, consider myself very fortunate to have even a small relationship with him, even though I didn't get to have him live for a class necessarily.
Well, he means a lot to me because when I was in college, I began reading his books. I never had the privilege of getting to know him ever, but just the way he would organize the questions. Just that alone was a big help to me as a young Christian. So I owe a lot to him in my coming to an understanding of some of these issues.
Sure.
And SES has an incredible, I know Ross wants to throw in a question, but just to say, I have to say they have an incredible roster of alumni as well as those who are still students. Frank Turek and Alyssa Childers, she's one of my favorite apologists now. She's associated with your school.
Yeah, she's currently a student. Yep.
Well, I got a question. I've been a volunteer apologist with Reasons to Believe since about 98 or 99. And I've been involved with Hugh Ross's Paradox class at Christ Church in Sierra Madre, California for that long. And I've been, every Sunday Hugh tells stories about going out and talking to other churches. And I know that there's a lot of churches and conferences and seminaries that don't want to have anything to do with Reasons to Believe, because even though Hugh Ross is a pretty conservative theologian, he has an old earth, viewpoint. And my question to you is, why does SES not hang up on that, especially you being in the South, which is kind of the young earth capital of the planet? What do you see in RTB and Hugh Ross that maybe some of the other schools are missing?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And honestly, we were talking before we started recording, we get quite a bit of flack for not having more young earth representation at some of our conferences. And that is primarily because we have yet to find a prominent young earth representative who's not also a presuppositional apologist. Which we staunchly oppose. And that is just antithetical to everything that the methodology and everything that we teach. at the seminary.
Um,
But to
Could you
yeah,
give the audience a very brief thumbnail sketch of what that is? What is presuppositional apologetics?
Yeah, sure. So you're going to hear different people define it different ways, but I think maybe rather than give a specific definition, which would just in lay level terms would be you start with the Bible and nothing else. Depending on which page you read of their particular apologist books, it's very hard to find a consistent view. But to give a more pertinent example, you'll have folks like Ken Ham, for instance, who's very famous for talking about: are you starting with God's word or man's word? Are you introducing outside ideas into the scriptures? And all these very pious sounding kind of talking points that at the end of the day, I'm actually doing a talk on this at the conference myself. At the end of the day, becomes a view that can only necessarily lead to either skepticism or just complete blind faith if you carry it out to its logical conclusion, which none of them do. But if you hold on to their philosophical underpinnings, that's where it leads. And so we find that rather problematic. But for RTB specifically, for reasons to believe, we've had a long-standing relationship with them. Both Hugh and Fuzz and Jeff Zwierink all are adjunct professors for us in our scientific apologetics certificate program. And one of the main things that draws us to them is their stance on inerrancy. They are very passionate about holding to a strong view of inerrancy, which we do as well, obviously, with one of our co-founders being Norman Geisler and involved with the International Society on or what was it, ICBI? I always forget the I always forget the initials, but
the International Council on Biblical
Inerrancy. Yes.
And just for the audience again, just we're talking about the Bible's inerrancy, that the Bible be the inerrant word of God. Everything it affirms is true. That's a basic definition of inerrancy.
Yep.
And I don't know of any older organizations besides Reasons to Believe that has taken a stance on inerrancy in the sense that they've actually affirmed it. Even AIG, Ken Ham's organization, they will not affirm the International Council on Biblical Inerrancy's stance on inerrancy because many of the signers were old Earth. So it's just an interesting dynamic.
Wow. How political is that?
Well, and I think that's one of the great things about SES is, we have professors who are young Earth. We have professors who are old Earth. Dr. Geisler, when they were writing the doctrinal statement for the school, specifically wrote it in a rather ambiguous way that most people will read in a young Earth fashion. But if you actually pay close attention to the way it's written, he just says in 6 literal, how's it worded? Historical days. That's the word. Historical days. It never says they're 24 hours, they're long periods of time, whatever. It leaves that open for debate because it's not an essential issue. And so even at the seminary, we have professors and students who take varying positions on that. And obviously, there are parameters there that guide those positions. You can go too far off the rails in either direction. But by and large, I think we actually did a survey with the faculty one time to see what the split was. And I don't think it was 50-50, but it wasn't very far off from that, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Interesting. So SES really is a place where a meeting of the minds can exist, where people can be cordial, talk about the issue, but they don't have to have a lot of rancor.
Right.
So that's very nice.
How does SES fit in right now? I know that there's a lot of seminaries these days are either becoming really liberal or just outright closing. And give us a view of, where do you think seminaries are going to be in 5 years or 10 years? Where's SES going to be? How do you fit into the kind of tragic path that's happening for seminaries?
Yeah, it has been very tragic. Even some very well respected schools have surprisingly gone in maybe woke is the right term right now
Yeah,
way in more woke direction. So for better or for worse, we have been extremely outspoken on our position regarding those issues.
good.
You can visit our website. There's ses.edu/racism has a response when all the George Floyd riots and all that sort of thing was going off. It gives somewhat of a natural law case against racism, but also against why we're not going to stand with the Black Lives Matter organization, for example.
Yeah,
Not the Black Lives Matter don't matter. We're not saying that at all, but the organization itself stands for something very anti-biblical. And so we lay out some of those cases. There's another page under our resources tab that is what is it, 24 questions about social justice and homosexuality, abortion, and all of these transgenderism, all these sorts of issues. And again, we're able to provide not only a biblical case, but a philosophical case for why these things are contrary to the good of human beings.
good.
So, for better for worse, we have planted our flag, and God forbid that we ever move that flag. We actually, have seen some folks be drawn to the school because of that stance. I am not aware of any potential students who have decided not to come to SES because of those stances. That may have happened, but I'm not aware of any of those cases. So hopefully,
Right.
the church is being sifted, and we will be there for the remnant who remain, who want to be equipped with solid philosophical and biblical thinking.
Yeah,
Well, you were telling me before our show that SES has a pretty strong certificate program. And I think that that's probably where seminaries are going to go. And it may be a very good thing. Instead of just being isolated academic centers, they may be partnering with churches more and more to not only provide training for future ministers, but also training for lay people. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, Adam, for the audience?
Sure. So, it is definitely the case across the board. Obviously, there are exceptions, but it seems to be the case more and more that seminaries are struggling with enrollment specifically, and just fewer and fewer people pursuing those higher education degrees. And I think that trickles down across higher education in general, at least from what I've seen. There's less trust in higher education. There are fewer people pursuing higher education. Economy makes it tough for people to afford higher education. So we at least have seen a significant increase, double digit, I think, percentage point increase over the last 5 years or so in our certificate programs. And
wow.
so our certificates are a little different. Most everybody offers certificates these days, whether it's a school or whether it's a parachurch ministry or whatever. They're a dime a dozen, but our specific certificate program is actually 4 credit courses. So that's FOR, not the number 4. So you're enrolled in the same courses, doing the same work as a degree student. And you can do that at the undergraduate level or at the graduate level. And so then you can roll those classes into a degree program later if you decide to go that route. So you're not watering down your education. And obviously, no time is wasted when you're learning about truth and goodness and learning truths about God. No time is wasted, but at least from an academic standpoint, you're really pulling double duty. So you're not getting a watered down version that you then have to go back and do extra work to earn credits for and those kind of things. You're just in the mix of it from the very beginning, which I don't know too many places that are doing that kind of program.
I didn't know that myself, and I'm encouraged by that. So one of the things that I commonly hear is that people just want a deeper understanding of their faith. And it's encouraging just to hear that people want that. And the fact that SES would provide such services for the church, I think that anyone here listening to this, listening to our discussion, if you're in a church and you're wanting your pastor to maybe bring in something that would give people a deeper understanding of their faith, they should look into Southern Evangelical Seminary to see if that might be a good fit for their church, or some of the lay people in the church.
Yeah. And I want to put in a plug just for apologetics for myself, Adam. One thing you said was that Christians are encouraged by it. And I know, a lot of Christians think of apologetics and give you tools to defend the faith, and that's absolutely true. But I know before I got involved with Reasons to Believe and Hugh Ross, my faith was kind of flat.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of questions. I just wasn't very alive. And I got involved with Hugh Ross, and I realized, wow, here's this guy that's trying to answer a lot of these questions that I've been asking. And I don't have training in any of this. I'm a building contractor. I build things. But I caught the apologetics bug, in the late 90s, and I can't get enough of studying my faith. And what it's done for me is it's given me so much confidence that what the Bible says is true, that what, Orthodox Christianity teaches is true, that it's just so much easier for me to share my faith with confidence.
Sure.
And so, that's, to me, that's the biggest role of apologetics, is to encourage people that already know the Lord to be able to have answers to this stuff, and then give answers to people who need it. But, I don't want people to think it's just for answering other people's questions.
Yeah. Oh, I tell people all the time, I got into apologetics to help myself. And if somebody gets helped along the way, then to God be the glory. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I'm with you there, brother. That's great. Good.
That's very good.
Well, I went to SES.
Yeah. Well, I guess I could.
I went to SES about 10 years ago, and then I went last year and hung out with this Travis Campbell guy, and we had a good time. And I'm definitely planning on coming this year. I may actually fly out there from Montana, which would be really interesting. So it's a good time.
And but Adam, you got to do me a favor. Adam, you got to be doing a favor. I'm going to be speaking at this conference in a side session. You can't let Ross in. He's going to throw eggs at me. He's going to throw tomatoes. You can't let the guy in my room. So you got to have a guard. You got to have a security guard there. And I don't know if I want to be seen with this guy a whole lot at the conference. So we're going to have to work through that.
We'll see. We'll have security there. We'll see what we can do.
I got a paper bag here I can put over my head, when I come in the room. So I'm good.
Yeah. So, well, Adam, in our remaining, Adam, in our remaining minutes, what are, as an apologetically oriented seminary, what is the main concern? Like, what is the main apologetical issue that you think SES is answering that is unique for your school that you don't see in a whole lot of other places?
Really what makes us unique as a school is the fact that everything that we do is infused with apologetics. So whether you're getting a degree in apologetics or not, you're going to get the apologetics. So really we are built around an integration of theology, philosophy, and apologetics, which really as a student was, or as an alum now, was my favorite thing. Just, going through class after class, thinking your professor speaking a foreign language half the time, and then something clicks and you say, oh, that's what that means. And then you take this next class, because that fits here. And this tapestry starts to build where all of these things start coming together, and you're really able to build a systematic way to think about reality as a whole and Christianity in particular. And of course, that opens up an entire world to you when it comes to encouraging your faith, as we just talked about, but answering these issues as well. And, the issues constantly change. The Dr. Geisler and others were fighting the inerrancy debates and all of those things back in the day. And of course, there's nothing new under the sun. So those debates are coming back around, and we're fighting the same things again. A few years ago, it was the new atheists that everybody was focused on. Now it's social justice and wokeism and all of these things that everybody's focused on. But what I think is most often missed, and I do not mean this in a disrespectful way at all, but I do think it's true, that so much of popular apologetics and popular Christian philosophy, as far as that goes, gives the game away from the beginning, because they're simply adopting the bad philosophy of their day, trying to argue from that to combat the bad philosophy of their day. So it looks like my lab chasing her tail constantly. You don't ultimately get anywhere. And so until you identify the bad philosophical starting points that you have to begin with, you realize that the questions you're trying to answer are only problems because you had bad philosophy that introduced the problems. The problems really aren't even problems to begin with if you're thinking correctly from the start. So, what sets us apart is our classical philosophy. This, we like to say, we're not Thomists necessarily as far as Thomas Aquinas goes. Obviously, we disagree with some of his ecclesiology and sacraments and various things, but we are Thomistic in the sense of our metaphysics and our natural theology, our view of God, our epistemology, which for Aquinas is just an offshoot of his metaphysics. And all of these things fuel your theology, they fuel your hermeneutics, they fuel your apologetics, and they fuel how you address these cultural issues, whatever it may be at the moment. And having a solid philosophical foundation gives you the tools to talk to anybody about anything, whatever the issue may be. You may not be prepared at the moment, but you at least have the tools to get prepared to address whatever cultural issue might crop up tomorrow that we haven't thought about yet. So that's really what I love about the way we teach things at SES.
Yeah, going back to the beginning of what
there
you
are
said,
a lot of seminary.
Go ahead, Travis.
No, go ahead.
It's kind of an age-old, problem in the church of trying to accommodate the culture to attract people to the church.
Sure.
And every generation in the church has had to try to fight that temptation. So that's it's the same now as it's ever been.
Yep.
Well, I'm actually, Ross and I were on the same wavelength, which I need to go have my head examined at this point.
That's really
that's
troubling.
a dangerous thing to be in, is in Ross's headspace. But one of the things that I'm hearing from you is that when you were in seminary, you did not do what a lot of seminarians do, leaving class with more doubts than you had faith. There are a lot of seminarians that leave their classrooms and they have all these doubts about what the tradition is saying, what the scriptures are saying. You left your classroom with a better sense of integration with what you were learning in the other class over here, which is a very encouraging thing.
Yeah, I think so. And
I've heard these stories where you have a minister in training that's doubting his faith now because of what a professor said.
Yeah, and that's always a danger, right? I mean, you're studying atheistic thinkers, you're studying open theists, or whoever it may be, so that you can, just like a doctor, you study the disease so that you can better understand the cure. But if you're a virologist, you risk exposure to that virus. So I mean, that's always a danger, but I think it is a necessary danger that we can't combat what we don't understand. Second Corinthians 10 tells us spiritual warfare is a battle of ideas, and we can't tear down strongholds if we don't understand what those strongholds are to begin with.
And those issues tune us up, right? If we didn't have that stuff to combat, we wouldn't have to think it through and come up with an answer. I mean, that's why you look at the history of the church, the early church, all the councils were all about answering those heretical things that came up. But if those things didn't come up, they wouldn't have thought it through on the depth and the deep level that they had to.
Yep.
Well, look, Adam, this has been an encouraging conversation, and you're going to be with us next week. We're going to talk a little bit more about the SES conference, who's going to be speaking, some of the themes that are going to be addressed, and I look forward to that conversation. Thank you so much for being on with us this week.
Yeah,
Well,
this
thank
is
you guys.
great.
It was a pleasure.
Yep.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.